Okay, well, good morning and welcome to this Licensing and Gambling Subcommittee being held on Thursday, 11th of November 2021. This meeting is being held remotely via Microsoft Teams due to restrictions in relation to COVID-19. My name is Councillor Walter Williams and I will be chairing this licensing meeting today. This meeting is being recorded or will be made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio, and those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Now I will carry out the roll call for attendance. Please can you announce yourself as present when I call out your name? Members first. Councillor Donna Cushing.
Present, Chair.
Councillor John Roberts.
Emma Kadiri, present, Chair.
And can I check the following officers are present? Lee Morgan, Licensing Manager.
Good morning, present, Chair.
Catherine Hopkins, Senior Licensing Officer.
Good morning, Chair. Present, I'm here observing today.
Tracy Helps, Licensing Officer.
Good morning, present, Chair.
Todd Rawson, Solicitor.
Morning, present, Chair.
Rebecca Barrett, Committee Service Officer.
Present, Chair.
And please can I check the applicant is present, Mr. Glenn White?
Yeah, present, Chair.
I also have a list of local residents attending the meeting. Please announce yourself as present when I call out your name. Mr. Terence Newhouse. Mr. M. Butler. Mr. C. Newbury.
Present, Chair.
Dr. P. Brown and Mrs. B. Brown.
Present, Chair.
Mrs. Kath Jordan.
Present, Chair.
And Mr. J. Harris. No. Can I also welcome supporting officers from licensing and committee services who are present in the background. Thank you all for confirming your attendance. Please can I remind attendees that if they lose connection during the meeting, please make every attempt to reconnect. Committee services are on hand and will be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. Please can I ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak. I should also remind everyone that the Chair has the discretion to remove persons from the remote meeting if that is necessary. If you wish to speak, please use the hands up function in Microsoft Teams. We now move to the agenda. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence, please? No. Declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Please use the hands up function to indicate if you have any such declarations. No. Agenda item 3, determination of premises license application, Brewmaster Brewing Company Limited, Unit 1, Cloyne, Caerphilly, CF83 1NW. Mr. Rawson from Legal, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, Chair. Before members consider the matter before them, I'll firstly run through the procedure that will be followed for this meeting. The procedure will be followed for today is that firstly, the licensing manager will present their report on behalf of the licensing section. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions regarding the information in the report. The applicant will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of the application. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. The local residents will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of their representations, and all parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the local residents. All parties will then have the opportunity to sum up. Please note that this should be a summary of any information you've already presented to the subcommittee, and no new information should be introduced at that time. Please can I ask, if you do not clearly hear a question or a response, that you ask the person speaking if they can repeat what they have said. If you lose connection, we will pause proceedings, so please make every effort to reconnect in the meantime. If you have difficulties reconnecting, please contact committee services on 01443 864 245. So it's 01443 864 245. Once all parties have summed up, the chair will then ask all parties to leave the meeting through the hang up button on Teams or the leave button, and the decision of the subcommittee will be circulated by the licensing department within 5 working days of the meeting. Because today is Armistice Day, the chair intends to pause the proceedings as close to 11 o'clock as feasible, so that all parties participating can observe the 2-minute silence in their own way. It may mean that we have to interrupt someone who's speaking, but if there's a convenient pause just before 11 o'clock, that may not be necessary. I hope you all endorse that decision, and please don't take offence from it if it's indeed you that is interrupted for the period of time. So that's the procedure for the meeting. If anyone has any questions, can they please indicate with their hands up, and we'll answer those on the running order before we proceed. I can't see any hands up, so I'll pass back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Legal. Can I pass over to Mr. Lee Morgan from licensing, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all welcome everyone to this meeting, Mr. White on behalf of Brew Monster and the local residents. Can I just acknowledge, please, that there have been a number of residents who have indicated that they would like for Dr. Brown to speak on their behalf, and they would include Mrs. Booth and Martin Williams and Rhian Griffiths. So I'm sure that Dr. Brown will clarify that later on, but just wish to acknowledge that at this point. So, members, the application for your consideration this morning is that it's a variation application made under the Licensing Act 2003 in relation to Brew Monster Brewing Company Limited, which the premises is then based at Unit 1, Loynatoin in Caerphilly. Could I first of all just direct members and all parties to a typo in the report in relation to the existing permissions for the retail sale of alcohol. At 1.3 it states Monday to Saturday 1600 till 2300. What that should read there is Monday to Friday 1600 to 23. Saturday, the existing permissions are from 12 midday through till 2300. So I just wanted to make members and all parties aware of that, and hopefully then the report thereafter will make sense given my comments throughout. So members, this variation application seeks to add the retail sale of alcohol hours to the licence that is existing, which was granted back in September 2000. In particular, the hours that this application seeks to increase relate to Saturday from 9 AM through till midday, and then from Sunday from 9 AM through to 2300 hours. Members, the paragraph 1.3 of the report sets out the application that's been made by the applicant and the corrected permissions as I referred to them at 1.31, and then the existing conditions which are attached to the premises license, they're set out for your information at 1.32. Members, this application has undergone the statutory 28-day consultation process, and paragraph 1.5 of the report details the representations that have been made during that time. Members, you will note that there have been responses received from fire, health board, the police and environmental health pollution team, who have indicated that they have no representations or objections to the proposed hours sought by the applicant. There have been representations, and they are set out at paragraph 1.52 from other persons, namely a number of residents, and a summary of the comments that they have submitted are contained then at 1.6 of the report, but you will find the individual comments then that have been submitted, and they are contained between pages 27 through to 41 of your report bundles there this morning. Okay, so you'll be able to see the comments that have been received during the 28-day consultation. The residents who are part of the meeting today will have an opportunity to address you about their comments after the applicant has made his application to you. The applicant has acknowledged receipt of the resident representations and has indicated he would respond to the same at the hearing today. Members, paragraph 1.8 of the report, this would effectively set out your considerations this morning. So you will look at the licensing objectives, you will consider the Licensing Act 2003, the statutory guidance issued by the Home Office, the Council's own licensing policy, and indeed then all representations that you will hear at this meeting today. Paragraph 1.9 of the report bundle sets out some officer observations on the application, and there's a few I would just like to highlight if I may. Members, your consideration this morning is for the additional hours sought by the applicant and not the merits of the existing licence held. I would add that planning and licensing are two separate and discrete regimes, and it is possible that the licence could be granted in the absence of planning or planning permission obtained ahead of a licence. Just for members' clarification and for local residents, also, the licensing authority cannot prevent applications being made at any time by a licence holder or by any person seeking a licence. So it does not have the ability to exclude applications being made. Just one final few points in relation to opening hours. Now, neither opening hours nor the sale of food before 2300 hours and 5 AM, those are not licensable activities. So if the relevant permissions are there, then these activities could be undertaken at a premises. What I would say, members, during the 28-day consultation, a number of representations have been received in relation to other premises in the area and some concerns about management issues at those premises. What I would say is that officers of the licensing team have been in touch with the premises that were identified and the complaint or the matters referred to in the representations of the residents have been addressed specifically with either the premise licence holder or the relevant person at that premises. Members, after hearing from the applicant and residents, you will retire to make a determination of this application. As always with reports of this type, there is an officer recommendation contained within the report. I would point out that that is based on information received ahead of this hearing, and members, you will be able to make your own decision after hearing from all parties at this hearing today. So, Chair, that's me for now. So I will hand back to you, and in order that you could perhaps invite any questions for myself. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, licensing. Are there any questions for licensing, please? Using the hands up function. No questions.
Actually,
now
Chair,
move to-
sorry, I do have a question. Sorry, I couldn't get from one screen to the other quick enough then.
Councillor
What I
Cushion,
want
yeah.
to ask is, from licensing, I'm sure I read somewhere in the report that they currently aren't open, or there hasn't been enough time that's elapsed regarding the current licensing hours. Am I correct in thinking that, Lee?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cushion. I think the reference in the report may have come about following some resident comments that the premises has yet to open and undertake any licensable activity to date, or certainly at the time of the preparation of the report at that point. Mr. White, I'm sure, will be able to clarify for you in due course whether the premises has actually commenced trading now and has undertaken any sale of alcohol from the premises. I think that was the reference in the report, is the concern about the variation application that's been made to extend the hours prior to the premises actually starting trading and undertaking any licensable activity to date.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reference that you may have seen.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Chair,
you,
if
Councillor
there's no
Cushion.
further questions, I'll hand back to you again and let you invite the applicant to make his application.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. No more questions? No hands up? I now move to the representation from the applicant, Mr. White, please. Can I ask you to address the subcommittee in support of your application?
Yeah, no problem. I've put my camera on, but if it starts to freeze because my connection's not great, then let me know, and I might have to turn my camera off just to make sure you can hear me.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so applying granted the license. Our original plan back then was to have opened earlier this year, because at the time we were applying, we came out of the first lockdown. We were sort of trading, we were sort of just about to sort of get started on the fit out of the premises. Obviously, we'd had a lot of opposition at the time from local residents, and I was like a local councillor. So we sort of obviously adapted sort of some our opening hours that we'd originally requested to make sure we could address some of the concerns that were raised. Obviously, as I mentioned, our plan was to then open earlier this year to start commence trading. Obviously, and as we didn't know at the time, we then went back into a second lockdown, which lasted longer, had an even bigger impact on our business because it was longer. There was less sort of support around, and because we then started obviously spending a lot of money on fitting out the premises. So now we've to answer the councillor's question, we haven't started trading yet. We're just coming towards the end now, hopefully, of sort of another month or so to finish the fit out of the premises, and we've set a date to open the premises at the end of January. But as part of this sort of the last sort of couple of months of preparing for opening, we've obviously looked at sort of the business model in light of the last year. Obviously looked at our competitors of the likes of Weatherspoons and Courthouse and other businesses around them when they are trading, and we've sort of made the decision we wanted to apply for this variation because we feel that we need to have those extra opening hours on the weekends to be able to make this venture work for us. We don't feel that it will cause any detriment or have any effect on the local residents. So yeah, obviously we put forward this variation to add to the hours. We're already sort of restricted against sort of some of like competitors because of the fact that we agreed a year ago to restrict our hours during the week to only open at 4 p.m. because of some of the concerns of local residents and people that parents of children attend the school, which obviously puts us at a detriment to competitors in the area. So for us, the Saturday morning and the Sunday trading hours is really essential, and we can sort of be able to be allowed to trade at those times. And we also hope then that it'll allow us to increase our staffing and probably create at least another half a full-time employee, possibly a full-time employee, depending on how busy it is then during those times. So we think it's a really positive thing for our business, and that's obviously why we brought it to you now. Do you want me to go through some of our response to the representations received from the residents?
Yes, please. Yes,
No problem,
please,
okay.
Mr. White.
No problem. I think, as an overall, I mean, obviously there's a number of issues raised. So, we've obviously looked at all of these. The only thing I would say is I think a lot of them actually don't really relate to the license and the premises license and the bar side of our business. Obviously, we've had this project which we hoped would only take a few months. Obviously gone on. We think we started around February, and obviously the works are still going on. So obviously the project hit a few hurdles as which are well documented in the press, like materials, tradesmen, etc. So I appreciate that there's some of these concerns, and we've obviously worked to address any of these concerns. So where there's some discussion around, there was an incident where there was a couple of things where they've talked about the builders sort of parking their vehicles outside on the street and things. So whilst it's not relevant to the licensing, obviously we've spoken to the builders and we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen, so as not to have any impact on local residents. But obviously that's very much a short-term thing, and within the next month or so that's not going to be an issue anyway because the builders will be gone and will be up and trading. But yeah, so going through this, obviously, so if I go through one by one, resident A talks about there being sort of noise and disturbance. Obviously, that's something we've already looked to address previously. We wouldn't want any noise or disturbance at any time of the week. Saturday and Sunday will be no exception. We've invested heavily to make sure that the unit is well insulated and soundproofed as best we can. It's been fitted to a really high standard, all modern building regulations, etc. They've also talked about things like the emission of unpleasant odours. Again, that's something related to the brewery, and we have got controls in place to prevent that. But obviously, if people want to look at, speak to me and sort of if they have got concerns, we're more happy to look at it. But obviously, that doesn't necessarily relate to the bar and sort of the premises license. Parking issues, obviously mentioned as well, which obviously I've touched on. In terms of the bar, we don't expect that many people will be driving to the venue, because it's obviously alcohol and drinking driving rules, etc. Obviously, there's the main towing car park that's just up the road, which we anticipate that people that do drive to the venue would obviously use. So again, we don't sort of believe that will be an issue for residents. So moving on to resident B and C, they've talked again about noise and in relation to building works, which I've already addressed, and vehicles, again, which I've addressed. They've also talked about there being overturned waste bins. So I think this relates to a specific incident a couple of months ago where some, I believe, youths had sort of pushed over their bins during the night. I think it was flagged up to one of our staff the next morning, who then obviously dealt with it and put the bins back, etc. We haven't had any sort of any further incidents on that to my knowledge. But again, I guess it's sort of unrelated to the sort of our premises license application, because obviously they're the bins that's used by the brewery. And obviously, a sort of a one-off incident. Going on to sort of resident D, they've obviously talked again about, so they've talked about like the potential for increased traffic and noise. As I mentioned, I don't think there'll be a massive increase in traffic as a result of this. I think most people will walk or use public transport. Those that do drive are likely to park in the town. Obviously, there's rules around whether they can park on the town itself. And noise, as I mentioned, we obviously, we're very conscious of not, wanting to cause any kind of disturbance, and we've invested as much as we can to make sure that that's not going to be an issue. As mentioned in the report, we don't have any outdoor seating or outdoor drinking, so there won't be any people outside. Again, they mentioned the waste bins, which I think is referring to that same specific incident. And again, they're talking about sort of parking of work vehicles, etc., which again talked about. Resident E talks about depositing waste at other licensed venues and sort of audible, something about being audible. Again, obviously that doesn't really relate to us. Obviously relates to a different venues. And then they've also talked a little bit about there being abuse and assault on some occasions, but again, obviously relating to another venue rather than our own venue. Resident F talks again about there being some public nuisance relating to building works and air conditioning units. So obviously building works we talked about. We've spoken to the builders about that. We're addressing it, and that shouldn't be an issue again. But it certainly won't, because they'll soon be finishing. They talk a little bit about air conditioning units, which was mentioned by one or two residents. So obviously, during the building works, the installation and commissioning of our brew kit, we've obviously put in new air conditioning units. Air conditioning chiller units. There was a period where the enclosure for them was still being built and tested. So there was a little bit of noise, but we only during the daytime because we were always very conscious to make the chillers are fully up and running, fully insulated. I've done extensive testing myself, and there's no sort of noise impact from them when now that it's fully up and running. They barely run, in fairness, because it's an efficient system. But again, I guess that's more brewery related rather than bar related anyway. But I thought it worth addressing that. Resident F also mentions again the same issues of waste bins and the builders' vehicles, which again I've already addressed. Moving on to Resident G, smell or disruption with the additional hours. Again, I feel like things like the noise, the processes we've put in place to deal with any sort of mess or disruption, are covered with the existing conditions and our processes in place. So I don't feel that the additional hours will actually have any impact and cause any of those concerns to crystallise. That Resident G also referenced the air conditioning unit as I've addressed, and the waste bin incident, which again goes back to that specific incident. Resident H has sort of objected on the basis that I promised not to apply for. But actually, just to clarify, when I originally put the application in,
sorry, Mr. White, the sound is breaking up a little bit for me, so I don't know if it's doing that for members. Perhaps could we ask you at this point to perhaps switch your camera off, and perhaps if we can proceed on that basis, because there may be things that may not be captured. Is that helpful to everybody?
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, sorry, I apologise. But yeah, so just to clarify, when we originally applied for the application, we did apply for Sunday. I then subsequently took it out following some information discussion with the planning, which I misconstrued and thought that they didn't want us to have it, or whether we weren't allowed to have it, but actually that wasn't the case. So when we came to the licensing hearing, a year or so ago, I did ask that we could still have the Sunday, but it was because we'd already taken it out. And so I think, again, it's not something that it's something we'd always wanted and felt that it was important, but I think even more so now in light of, the last 12 months that we've been through, the pressures on the business, we do feel it's even more important that we can trade on a Sunday. But I think that addresses all of the sort of the main things that's been brought up by residents. So just to reiterate, I think, we've worked really hard originally to try and come up with sort of conditions and processes and controls that we don't have impact on residents. we want to be a really good, neighbour to them. And I feel like we have built better relations with the neighbours since we've been on site over the last sort of 8 months or so. And yeah, hopefully, we can continue down that vein. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. White. Are there any questions for Mr. White, please? Donna Cushin, please. Councillor Cushin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Regarding the bins, can I have clarification? Are the bins belonging to the brewery or they belonging to the licensing area of the building, Mr. White?
It is one and the same company. It's Brew Brewing Company. Obviously, there's two parts to the building. One is the bar, one is the brewery. The bins are obviously exclusively used by the brewery at present, but we do anticipate using those same bins for the bar when the bar opens.
Right, and they aren't in a locked area. They just sort of.
They haven't been up until now because of the building works. There hasn't been the space to put them inside.
You can have them outside, but in an enclosed sort of thing, if you know what I mean. That's what I was trying to get clarification on.
Yeah, so they will be inside. They should be inside as of now. To be honest, we've over the last couple of weeks we've been trying to get the yard cleared to make sure we've got the space for them. So they should now be inside, but they certainly will be going forward. So they'll be enclosed in the yard, so they won't be accessible to customers or passers-by or anyone. It'll only be accessible to staff.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, please.
Firstly, just coming back to that, they're permanently left on the street, those bins. They've been on the street for the last 8-9 months since they've had the building work started. My question to Mr. White was actually, can he give an example of what better relations he's actually undertaken with the neighbours? Because as far as I'm aware, there has been no negotiation at all with neighbours in relation to any of these licensing activities.
The lady that lives directly next door to us in the bungalow, I believe her name is Marjorie, I believe. Apologies, I shouldn't hope. So we've spoken to her on multiple occasions. When we were doing some work in our yard to clear away some of the stingy nettles and the bushes, it sort of opened up a bit of a gap with her garden, and she'd obviously asked us at the time. She said, it's a bit sort of exposed. She asked us whether we had anything to do. So, with her agreement, then we sort of built a wall there to sort of obviously give her that bit of privacy back. She'd asked whether we could paint the wall, which we agreed to when we were going to, but then she subsequently decided instead that she wanted to put wood or cladding against the wall, and asked our permission, and we were of course. So yeah, I think with her, we spoke to her on multiple occasions, and we've obviously tried to help ensure that she's happy, and that she feels safe with the wall there, and but it still looks nice on her side. So yeah, we're obviously trying to do that as best we can. So I think that she'd be the best example because she's the closest to us and she's the one we've had most contact with. Obviously, we're always open to still speak to people. We have a lot of people that come by, many of which live nearby, perhaps not necessarily on the street, but within sort of walking distance. And we've forever have people walking by, asking questions, seeing the place. So yeah, we're always really trying to make an effort to get to know locals and make sure that they're sort of happy and generally they are supportive of what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clive Newbury, please. You're on mute, Mrs. Newbury.
Does it work now?
Yes.
Yeah, you're there now. It's gone back off again. You're on mute again.
It keeps going.
Yeah, you're there now.
Going on and off, so apologies for that. Let's try quickly then. I'd just like to ask Mr. White, I mean, you say you're approachable to residents, but the abuse mentioned was actually from you and your workmen. So how do you think that we can approach you when actually we're too scared to come anywhere near you and ask you about any of the things that are going on?
Sorry, I don't know what you're referring to with that. Sorry. We've only ever sort of spoken and gone with people who've come by.
Well, no, you and your workmen have both been abusive to residents, and I wouldn't personally feel safe coming to talk to you, and you are the manager there, so as far as I'm concerned, whether they're builders or your actual employees, you are responsible for them, and I don't feel safe coming to talk to you, so I don't see how I can raise these issues with you face to face in that kind of attitude.
I mean, I can't speak for you. I mean, we've only ever been approachable, and we do have lots of people that sort of come by and speak to us. And I mean, I don't know what else to say other than the fact that we have a lot of people that come and speak to us, and I've never had any reports of anyone being upset or any issues that I mean, I can't.
Well, I think you have, but we'll have to disagree. But that's the issue, isn't it? If you're not managing your workforce, and you yourself are not approachable, then how on earth can we have a reasonably good neighbourly relationship? I don't see it so far. And to say not related to the licensing is not, you are responsible for that licensing. Yeah. That's just my point I'd like to make here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I am approachable, and as are my team and the builders, because as I mentioned, we've had loads of examples of people who have come by and spoke to us. And we've been nothing but polite and professional, and been any concerns they had, although concerns is more questions and interest in what we're doing. So, I mean, yeah, I can only, I'd be apologies if you haven't felt comfortable to come and speak to me, but I am approachable and accessible, and I'll of course deal with it politely and professionally. I mean, obviously you've never come on to me that I can recall, so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that. I mean, just other than the fact that we've got, loads and loads of people who have come and spoke to us and haven't had any issues.
Perhaps they don't have issues to raise, but I don't know.
I mean, I've always. Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Can I intervene, your chair? Can I?
Just a moment. Do you have any other questions, Mrs. Newbury?
No, thank you. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
No.
Okay.
All I want to ask, Chair, does Mrs. Newbury have any specific incidences that she can actually relate regarding where there might have been some abuse? If she could relate to specific incidences of a particular individual who approached them or the workforce or Mr. White specifically, that would be useful. Thanks, Mrs. Newbury.
Yeah, sure. I mean, our garden is directly overlooked by the back end of the premises, which I have to say look very nice in terms of their build. But the workmen have, during the summer, continually called down into the garden. I haven't felt comfortable sitting out in my own garden. They've made comments. They've aggravated the dog to go out. I am aware of at least one resident that was physically assaulted because I met him on his way back running. We nearly bumped into each other. Just really shaken about a physical assault that was alleged, I have to say, because I wasn't there, so I have to say it was an alleged assault on him when he went to challenge some of the building work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any such incidents. And obviously I've spent a lot of time on site, with the builders, discussing what work is being done and issues, etc., what materials they need, etc. And not once have I ever seen any such behaviour, because obviously that would be concerning to me. But to reassure you, obviously, in their very final phase, will soon be completed, and so again, will be nothing to do with the bar once we sort of open. But again, like I said, I would never condone such behaviour. I've not seen any examples of it or any such examples being reported to me.
Right, thank you, Mr. White. Are there any other questions? Mr. White? There's no hands up. So we move on now to representations from local residents, please. Mr. Newhouse?
Chair, I've been asked to represent Mr. Newhouse as part of the other two as well, so I'll deal with his bits when they come through, if that's okay.
Okay, Mr. Brown, thanks. Mr. Butler, please. No? We go to Mr. Brown then, please. Mr. Paul Brown.
Thank you, Chair. As I said, I've been asked, as was mentioned early in the meeting, to represent two other residents. They were Mr. Williams and residents A and B, Mrs. Booth and Mr. Williams, but I've also been asked to represent Mr. Newhouse, which is resident C, in addition to myself. I appreciate that some of the issues that have been raised aren't necessarily directly related to licensing, but they're used as examples of public nuisance in relation to a premises which hasn't even opened for licensing and is causing noise and disturbance. Appreciate some of the noise issues are due to the building work, and that is going to finish at the moment, but the main issue, I think, for many of the residents is this extension over a weekend, and despite the licensing manager's comments in the report that there are other local facilities that are opening between sort of 9 on a Saturday to midnight on a Sunday, two of those facilities aren't anywhere near or aren't in a residential area. The other two facilities are actually premises which have been there for between 100 and 200 years before the houses were built. So it's a bit difficult to make a complaint from a resident's perspective about premises that was already there. However, Brew Monster has come after the housing has been built, and it looks okay as if it's just another facility that's going to be added. The area in which the Brew Monster is located on a Sunday is extremely quiet, even during the summer months, and it's nice to be able to sit out in a garden and just hear birds and birds and enjoy the weather and so on. The previous business that was there operated on a Saturday for 5 hours. This application is taking forward an increase in hours, 3 hours on a Saturday and 14 hours on a Sunday. This then gives an extra 50 odd days a year with the Sunday, which makes the premises open virtually 365 days a year. So the increase in hours on the weekend has gone from 5 to 28. And I think this is the concern that the residents have, that there is no break in actual movement around the site at any particular point in time. Consequently, as I said, an increase in hours from 5 hours of business that was there previously in a residential area to 28 hours on the Sunday. So that's the main perspective I think we'd like to make in relation to the licensing application from that point. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Dr. Brown, are there any questions, please? No questions for Dr. Brown. We go to Mrs. Jordan.
Hi, I'm representing my mum, Mrs. Marjorie Tilley. She lives in the bungalow directly adjacent to Brew Monster, and Mr. White is right. He has built a good relationship with her, and she doesn't have a problem with the business per se. The increase in hours, she feels, will be incredibly disruptive to her being on a weekend, particularly the Sunday when, as Dr. Brown said, you want to sit in your garden and enjoy the weather. My mum feels that it would severely hamper her well-being with the amount of people, noise, the increase in traffic, The smoking area is directly next to her garden wall. So there'll obviously be extra noise, people gathering in that location. You can actually look into her garden from the smoking area. You know, during the week, in the evenings, that's maybe not a problem. But on a weekend, when you want to sit in your garden, you don't want to feel like you're being watched by, you know, people who are in the pub next door. So, you know, that's her main objection, is that she wouldn't like the hours increased. But she has asked me to mention that Mr. White has been approachable and has been fair to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Are there any questions, please, for Mr. Jordan? Mr. White, please.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted, rather than a question, it's more just to add that the Marge has been lovely, and we'd be happy, happy to work with her on anything we could do to sort of address her concerns. We're more than happy to sort of work with her. But what I would say is, obviously, our bar is on the other side of the building, away from the yard. So the bar side is away from the yard. It's on the other side of the building, completely enclosed, no outdoor space. So, granted, I take the point about the smoking shelter, but in terms of the bar itself, people would be, visiting, entering, exiting the bar, and quite far away from obviously, without that, there's not going to be sort of sitting around impact on it. Then, I'll point to the fact that actually, so I guess, from your concern, from your point of view, rather, the bigger concern would probably be more like the social club, which does have a beer garden that is directly behind us and arguably closer to her garden than our bar is. I don't feel that we will have that sort of detrimental impact on her from our use of the bar.
Okay,
we have discussed with Marjorie, because she's got trees that sort of block, basically act as a barrier between our yard and her garden. She's asked, and we're going to do it for her, is to build our wall up on that side so that she has that increased amount of privacy, and would again obviously have an effect on dampening any noise that was there.
Thank you, Mr. White. Councillor Cushin, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
I guess trying to give an example.
Yeah, it's just clarification I want, really. So the smoking area that currently overlooks Mrs. Jordan's mum's garden, is that for the brewery, or will that be the permanent smoking area for the bar as well? Because I know Mr. White highlighted that the entrance to the bar is in the front. So I'd be curious to know if that smoking area is just in relation to the brewery side of things, or if it's going to be used as a permanent smoking area for the bar as well.
The smoking area will be used for both. The brewery doing sort of, now like the sort of 9 to 5 Monday, Friday hours, and then for use for bar customers doing, so the smoking area is on the front part of the yard, closest to our building. So it's not directly next to Marjorie's garden. It's probably about, I don't know, 10 meters maybe from her garden, 5 or 10 meters from her garden. And that's where I said that there's the tree cover, and where we'll be building the increasing the height of the wall to give her a bit of extra privacy as she's requested. So as I mentioned, that is the bit that's a little bit closer to a property. To that, smoking. It's not a permanent place where people can be there drinking. It's only there to go smoking, and because customers won't be permitted to take any alcohol or drinks out to the smoking area. They'll be purely for smoking.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Paul Brown, please.
Yeah, in relation to the smoking area, there are other incidents with other facilities around the area. He says he has a smoking area, but they've got to come out of the front of the building to travel along the pavement back into the yard to go to the smoking area. The other institutions locally have similar sorts of facilities, but they're not used. People do stand outside the front doors of premises and smoke outside those premises, even though there is a smoking facility 10, 15 meters further away. That facility is directly going in through from the open door. If they do stand out the door, as they do in the municipal, as he's already mentioned, with issues, and other premises within the town, that is on a public highway and is directly affecting other residences directly opposite and up the lanes on the back end of Lonitoin and Eastview. And that it's amazing because of the situation in which the area is. There's a sort of natural sound effect that echoes around, and any sound is amplified quite dramatically because it's within a sort of bowl area, and it's amazing how far sound travels within that area. And as I say, there might be a smoking area down that area, but I think experience of other places, it's likely to be of limited usage. Thank you.
If I can come back to Dr. Brown, just to sort of clarify, so, obviously as part of the previous license application, obviously the use of a smoking area, a lot of these issues were obviously discussed at length at the time, and around that time we'd obviously engaged a consultant who specialises in sort of acoustic and noise, who had done a sort of an in-depth study of what our proposals were. More of a planning rather than for licensing specifically, but obviously it's sort of a concern, something we look at across board. It's an area. So, time. What I would say, I agree that the area is relatively quiet, but obviously I've been doing sort of extensive testing myself over the last couple of months with sort of sound meters to understand, make sure that we're not going to create any noise pollution from the use of our chillers and things and our brewing equipment. And I would say that whilst it is a quiet area, you actually have a lot of traffic noise. And I would say traffic noise from, because you've got, I think it's Market Street, obviously, that, the hill that goes up. That's a really busy road, and the vast majority of noise you're getting is from traffic on that road. So I don't think, I don't feel that sort of,
it's quite limited on a Sunday. It's quite limited on a Sunday.
It's still that's the main source of noise is that street. And I would disagree that it's a sort of a specific geography that creates any sort of enhanced noise or anything. I would say it's and I think we're doing everything we can to sort of address it, and and we have with the use of an expert previously. So I don't feel that this makes a material difference to be adding the Saturday and Sunday hours, because we'll be adhering to the same sort of conditions and processes we've already sort of discussed and put in place.
Thanks.
Right, thank you. Councillor Roberts, please.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Mr. White, really. I'm listening to what's been said. Mr. White, the staff you propose, is there an intention to employ door staff at all? And if so, which hours?
Thanks, Councillor. So, in relation to door staff, no, we're not intending to have door staff. In our experience with our other bars, the type of clientele that we attract very different to the likes of Wetherspoons or sort of King's Arms and some of the other locals. We tend to attract a clientele that generally speaking, perhaps a slightly older, slightly wealthier, generally come in for more like a small number of drinks because we charge a higher price rather than volume drinking late into the night. So whilst obviously we the license allows until 11 o'clock at night, based on our experience with other bars, and we expect this to be exactly the same. Generally speaking, it gets really quiet towards the end of the night, and very little stay on bit. And we've had basically zero trouble across any of our bars in the past. So no, we don't anticipate any need for.
Can I come
Obviously,
back
in? If a need arose, of course.
Thank you, Mr. White. I'm only just listening to what you're saying. There's no intention for door staff, and I'm listening to what you're saying about the type of customer you attract and you hope to attract. But it's a walk-in, yes? So anyone can come in? Given where you are, given the site of the place, it's a walk-in?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
I think we obviously this is something. It's the same thing at other bars. One in central Cardiff, one in Cardiff Bay, which again are walk-in bars, but you see that the proximity of the likes of a Wetherspoons is the best example. You find that the type of people who are looking more for volume drinking, more likely to potentially cause any disturbance, they do tend to be attracted more to those type of venues rather than our venue. So our other bars are exactly the same situation. They're walk-in, but we still attract that the more desirable customer that we want. So those other bars haven't really had the need to have door staff either. And they're in potentially arguably higher risk areas like the centre of Cardiff and Cardiff Bay.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, you've still got your hand up.
Not on mine, Chair, but I can't see it. Oh, yes, I have. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. But before we sum up, can I check if there are any residents in attendance at the meeting who have not presented their representations and wish to do so now, please? Mr. Rosen?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just mindful of the time being 10:57. Given that the residents who are attending who don't wish to speak haven't changed their minds, perhaps it's now a good time to adjourn until 11:02 or 11:03. What's your thoughts?
Okay, thanks. Yeah. We'll have the summing up when we come back, I think.
Yeah, that way we're not interrupting the summing up. I think that could put people off.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We'll have a little break now for Armistice Day. And we'll, with 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, thanks very much. Before, I'd like to ask all parties now to sum up, please. I'll go to Mr. Lee Morgan, licensing, to sum up first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in respect, just before we broke, I think you give any residents the opportunity to make their representations to you. I would just refer members to the individual comments of those who did not attend today. They are contained in the report bundle at pages between pages 27 through till the end of your packet, pages 41. So I know that you would have read those already and bear those in mind. And my summing up, Chair, would be that as members of this committee, you will be required to determine this application in line with what I said earlier, really, in considering of the licensing objectives and the promotion of the licensing objectives, the Licensing Act, the statutory Home Office guidance, the Council's own licensing policy, and indeed all the information that you've heard at this meeting this morning. So, Chair, other than that, there is a recommendation in the report, but ultimately the decision obviously will be that and that of your fellow members. But thank you.
Thank you. I'll go now to local residents, please. Mr. Newbury.
As I said, Chair, Mr. Newbury's comments. Sorry.
Sorry, you're okay.
Mr. Newbury, yeah. Sorry.
Dog's just walking over my iPad. Sorry about. Yeah, I mean.
Summing up, please.
Yes, our comments are as such. We agree with the comments already made by Dr. Brown and Kath on behalf of her mother, that we think the noise and disruption will destroy the peaceful enjoyment of our own premises and garden. We don't understand the need for the increase if it's not a competition with other local residents, and we would ask that the proposals are declined. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Dr. Brown.
Yeah, as I said, my concern is the increase in the hours. This is an increase in hours of 17 to 19 hours over what they've already have, and which then makes the premises open for nearly 365 days of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan, please.
I'd just like to reiterate that my mum's concerns about the smoking area, and wonder if a proviso could be in place that the smoking area will fully shelter the property, my mum's property, from the smokers. You know, her privacy is her main concern, really. So if the hours are to be increased, hopefully then the impact will be lessened with a large smoking shelter that was totally enclosed and blocked off from her garden. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. White, please.
Yeah, just on that point, yeah, we're more than happy to work with yourself, Mr. Jordan, and your mother to make sure that there's no impact from the smoking shelter and it is completely closed off. So yeah, we'll definitely happy to work on that basis with you. I mean, yeah, just to summarize for myself, obviously, you know, by far we've probably spent in the region of about £600,000, you know, on this building. We're really committed to sort of making this, you know, a real showpiece place, you know, for our business, but also for Caerphilly. I mean, when we wouldn't want to compromise, you know, that and, you know, the many years that we hopefully be, you know, a good part of the community by allowing any sort of, you know, disturbance or noise or antisocial behaviour, etc. So we're really committed to try and, like I said before, be a good neighbour and really work with residents. I mean, I respect the
I'm sorry, Mr. White. I didn't get
really,
the last.
it's going to make a real difference to us.
Sorry, Mr. White, if I can interrupt you, I think if you can just perhaps go back a couple of seconds. I didn't hear some of what you just said.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, my signal does seem to be struggling a little bit. Yeah, so I was saying, we put a huge investment, and this is our biggest project we've ever done as a business, and we're really committed to trying to, be a really good and positive part of Caerphilly. We wouldn't want to compromise.
You're gone again, Mr. White.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear you now? Yeah.
We got to as far as you didn't say.
Okay,
You said you didn't want to compromise. We heard today, and then obviously after that, it sort of cut out.
Yeah. So what I say is, we, having the size of this project and the investment we've made, we wouldn't want to compromise it by allowing, noise or disturbance or antisocial behaviour. So, we're really committed to make this work and, to have a positive impact on the local area and Caerphilly.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you to everyone for attending today. On the representations, legal, please.
Thank you, Chair. In a moment, the Chair will ask all parties to hang up, and the subcommittee will retire to discuss the application and the representations that they've heard today. I will be there to offer legal advice, and the committee clerk will also be present. The decision of the subcommittee will then be circulated by the licensing department within 5 working days of the meeting. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, legal. Thank you all for attending, and a good day to you. Please can I ask all parties to leave the Teams meeting now by pressing the hang up button and leave. Thank you.
Thank you.